welcome to the Posit Podcast. I am Dr. Sam, and with me is Dr. Robert. And of course, you'll notice we have a guest today, which is always our favorite. So this is Andria Beal with Epipaws, and I'm so excited that Andria has joined us today. Thank you so much for being here, Andria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're very excited. So I have to tell a little story about the fact this is actually the second time we're talking to you. And our very first interview got erased and I felt horrible. And I'm just so thankful that you've come back again. I was telling you guys that, you know, there's something in our little studio down here because my husband does a podcast too, and their second episode got erased. So I'm so sorry that yours is the episode that got erased. But I promise you, I will handle this one very carefully and make sure that it goes to the proper place without that being able to happen. So again, thank you so much.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy to have you.
Can't wait. And honestly, we'd love to have you share with our audience what you do with Epipaws, because honestly, Sam and I both, we've talked to you before, but we love what you're doing as veterinarians because we think it makes such a big impact on our industry, and you can obviously explain it better than we can. So do you want to give us just a quick rundown of Epipaws, and then we'll drill you with questions? No, I'm kidding.
We'll have a lovely conversation.
Oh, feel free to fire away. At Epipaws, we are developing epigenetic biomarkers for pets. We do have a focus on longevity and age in particular. And that being said, we do have our first product on the market, which is a chronological age test for dogs and cats. And this test is great for adopted pets. You have no idea how old they are. We really try to get at what the actual birthday is with a lot of accuracy. Then on the other hand, we're also interested in these other markers that also correlate with age. And so they're markers that are changing with time with age, but they're really noisy per individual. And what that noise tells us is something about the health of the individual. And we call this biological age. With biological age, we get kind of this health assessment from the markers, as well as if we're measuring it over time, we see the trajectory and the rate of aging, which is really important to keep track of.
Wow. So would you, in a perfect world, if you're really trying to track that age, is it helpful kind of in the way that, you know, we talk about starting to do some baseline blood work as our pets start to get to, you know, around like 6 or 7, we're thinking, let's just see how we're doing. So is this something that if we were to start, like you said, we could track to see, wow, we're aging a little faster than we'd like, or what to expect?
Yes, exactly. So this is going to be something with the biological age that someone would want to do, you know, at least once a year. But I think it would be interesting to do it at least twice a year, actually, with how much these markers change and the amount of noise that we get. Because with epigenetics, everything in the environment is going to have an effect. If you change their food, it's going to have an effect. You change their exercise, it's going to have an effect. And this effect can be fairly quick. So you could do, you know, a test, get a snapshot of, you know, what do the markers look like? Yeah, it looks like they're aging quickly and they might be unhealthy. But then just a few months later, you make some changes, it might look quite different and not be nearly as bad as you thought it was in the first place. Could have been something, you know, something particular there. So it is a good idea to sample more often.
Would you say that, so like my dog has seasonal allergies, right? So right now, oddly, the fall is his just bad time. I know it, towards the end of August in Indiana, something is happening and he just goes crazy. So if we were to take his, let's say right now, would it look different than it does, let's say in the middle of the winter when he's nice and calm?
So if we're talking about the markers in general, yes, there's going to be certain areas of the genome that will reflect what's happening to him right then. What we don't know yet, and we're still researching and deciding on, is what markers are we going to use for this biological age. So there's a lot across the genome, and we could just look at them all, right? But that's expensive to do. So our goal is to figure out which ones are the most important if we're just trying to relay a snapshot of health. And we don't know for sure if, say, seasonal allergies will be something that gets captured in there. It's probably something we don't want to capture in the biological age, actually.
Right. Yeah.
It might be, that might be a separate test we might someday develop, is something around allergies, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So
That would be
there's-
great, actually.
Yes, yeah, and that's a big request, actually. I get that the most is when I ask, what would you like us to solve with epigenetics if we could just, wave a wand and it have a solution with epigenetics? And a lot of it is, allergies is a big one, and then some of these manageable diseases.
And probably cancer would be my other guess.
Yeah, definitely. And we definitely can do something with early diagnostics with cancer. We do see what we're looking at. The DNA methylation is what we actually look at. It does change with cancer.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, because I'll admit, shameful to admit this, I've been on TikTok and Instagram every once in a while, and these people talking about human epigenetics and like our biological age, and I'm like, do they have a test for people yet? Because I'm curious, with my current lifestyle of working overnights, my mom likes to continually tell me that I'm going to die at a very young age. So I was like, I wonder if there's a test that I could take. So is this available for like people as well? I'm just curious. Do you know? I know it has nothing to do with pets yet, but
Yeah, no, there are companies that are doing some sort of biological age for humans. The one that really comes to mind to me is Elysium.
okay.
And yeah, they offer a test. It's pretty expensive, and they're taking the approach of, we're still figuring things out, and they're looking all across the genome at everything they possibly can with that test, I believe, for that price that they have on there. But
So maybe I'll wait until insurance
until it
kicks in.
comes down a bit.
Yeah.
Can I ask, I guess maybe just to kind of introduce people a little more to, on the heels of that question, right? So can you explain your background, how you came to being able to do this, like what your education looked like, what your research looked like, how'd you get here? And then truthfully, I'm curious, how would we vet a company if we were going to do a test like what Robert, I know this is like a two-part question, but I am curious, how do we know if it's legitimate? Because we've talked to you, we know you're legitimate. So
Yeah.
explain how you got here.
yeah, definitely. So my background, I'm a scientist. I was studying, during my PhD, I was studying epigenetic biomarkers in sharks and dolphins. And so that's really what kicked this whole thing off and led me down the road to starting this company, was that I was studying epigenetics. And I created an age estimation test for dolphins during my PhD. And I loved how useful of a test it was. And that was what I wanted, was to work on things that were actually applicable in the real world. And so being able to estimate age of a wild population, that had a lot of great benefits. It helps with population modeling and all of that. And so I just loved how much interest there was in that test. And I wanted to make age estimation tests for all the animals. And that's where I went to a commercializing research boot camp at my university, Startup FIU. And I started talking to them about, I can make age tests for all these animals. And they were like, yeah, nobody owns dolphins, nobody owns these wild animals or whatever. And I was talking about doing this for researchers. And I was like, well, I can do it for pets. And there's lots of people with pets with unknown age. I know I've had them. And then that was where like light bulbs went off, and we looked into the market, and it was just like huge. And we're just like, okay, yeah. That was where I couldn't sleep at night. And I was like, I'm so going to make this age test for dogs and cats. And then from there, it just grew. The passion for bringing epigenetics to, the pet industry just grew from there. And I knew how important it would be to do something like biological for age for pets. We see how much it's like opened our eyes about how we should eat and exercise, and even fasting and some other things that you can do to really improve your longevity on the human side. And we haven't touched on that for our pets yet. And people are obsessed with their pets and they want them to live forever. So I'm surprised that we're not a little further along with our pets on this front.
That's a really good point, because I think for right now, for the general audience, when I'm sure Sam and I get it both all the time, but owners will always come in and ask, how old is my pet? And because they adopted them, they got them from a rescue, which is wonderful, and we love those adoptions.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, besides their teeth, that's really the only way we can really tell how old a pet truly is. And it's an estimate. And that's just like between the ages of after they get past like 3 or 4, it's kind of a shot in the dark for a couple of years.
I mean, I think probably the hardest thing is like you said, like they have their full adult dentition by 6 months. So really past that, you're kind of like, I mean, we all know that how they've eaten, how they've been taken care of is going to affect their teeth. It's going to affect their hair coat. It's going to affect, it's going to affect so many things about them. Truthfully, the only other reliable change that I can think of, and even that is tenuous, is that a lot of dogs start to get a little bit of like hardening of their lens, so nuclear sclerosis, right around 6. And so usually if I can see that starting, I'm like, they're probably about 5. And then if I can see it like, oh yeah, they have it, they're probably about 6. If they don't have it yet, but they have their full adult teeth, I mean, 2 to 4. I have no idea. I mean, that's it. It's the best we can do.
Yeah.
It's a great way for us to get an idea of. That's why I love what you're doing, because I think it solves like a basic problem a lot of our pet owners have, but then there's so much more application for it afterwards, which I think can really change how we view our pets. And like you said, help our pets live forever, because we all want that. And the current solution is apparently cloning your pets, which I've had a couple owners try and do. It's very expensive. First of all, don't
very
do it.
Expensive. I've had one. I've had to take samples to
really?
clone a pet once. Yep.
It's so bad. We'll talk about that in another podcast at some point. But but this is a more viable solution, I think, for helping to improve our pets' health. Because again, I think just like anything else, we expect our environment to play a role in how long we live, and it's just nice that we can actually measure that now, which I think is so. I love what you're doing. I think it's such a cool thing.
And this might be kind of a rudimentary question, I suppose, and also a bit loaded because you did a whole PhD on epigenetics. So there's a lot to epigenetics, but maybe people listening don't really know what that is. I mean, do you have just like a Reader's Digest? What are epigenetics?
Yeah, I have that version. So epigenetics is the study of molecules and mechanisms that are interacting with the DNA sequence. So and they usually play a role in gene expression. So we can see changes in the phenotype, which is whatever you see. It could be phenotype a lot of people think of phenotype as being, what color is the hair or the skin, and that is phenotype, but also the disease state is also a phenotype. So everything, everything that comes from and is a product of your DNA is being controlled by epigenetics in some way or form.
So like a little light switch, either turning genes on or turning genes off. Easy way to think about it.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Very cool.
And I think that plays a huge role for like human medicine one day, because I have a family friend that I know of, and all 3 siblings have a heart condition, but actually only one of them has actually needed a defibrillator because they collapsed one time, and the other 2 have been fine. They've been super athletes. They've been great. But so one of them, exactly. So it's like trying to figure out like this type of information might help in terms of like why they had an issue and someone didn't, or like the other siblings didn't, because they all had the carrier for it. Nothing else changed. And I think that's what's fascinating about all this, just like understanding that process and how much we can learn is great.
Yeah, a lot of what we know about epigenetics has it's been helpful to look at twins. So there's a bunch of twin studies for epigenetics, because you'll see, they have the exact same DNA code, but then this one has a freckle here, this one doesn't, and so forth. And it's all those little minor, environmental influences that make them look slightly different.
I think the entire idea of how genetics comes together is so fascinating. And if you think about even just like siblings, how many different genes, like combinations, can come from the parents, and then you know what I mean? And it is interesting to think like there are so many things we have control over, but so many things we really don't. The entire thing is very fascinating, honestly.
Yeah, there's a bunch of crosstalk. So that's what's complicated about actually studying epigenetics, is how it's connected to so many other things, is that you can't just study epigenetics. You have to study the microbiome, you have to study the DNA, the genetics, you have to study, lifestyle and social factors, and just everything is going to mess with the epigenetics. So it makes it a little more complicated to look at. And like we were kind of discussing earlier before we got started, with collaborating with someone for research, it might not be it might not be an epigenetics department or even a genetic department that I want to work with. It might be something else like nutrition or microbiome or something like that, where they're getting the types of samples that we also want to look at the epigenetics for.
Well, it seems like we're just learning more and more about just even how much the microbiome plays such a role in our immunity and in our health. And you can see it every day. I think you mentioned, and maybe you can talk about, like, you kind of worked with Hills a little bit, because that's a big push for them right now. All their foods are really trying to help support the microbiome, and like how important that is. Gut health is, and then also can be done very incorrectly as well. So I don't know, maybe you could talk
Yeah.
about that a little.
Yeah, definitely. So we are looking at partnering with a couple different companies. We are hoping to move forward with Hills on maybe some microbiome stuff, but that is of interest for us at Epipaws to look at the microbiome and not ignore it when we're looking at our epigenetics. Because we do have, I guess, something else with our biological age. The first thing we want to do is leverage it to try and feed our pets better and find out what foods slow down the aging process, as well as identify what foods are accelerating the aging process.
Oh yeah.
For example, in humans, we know that dairy actually switches on some aging markers. So you might
Don't
want
tell me
to
this.
back off
I
of
love
dairy.
cheese.
I know.
Yeah, I know. I love cheese too. So I'll eat my cheese, but then I might, sub out my ice cream for, almond milk ice cream or something, try to balance it.
Oh, you're
Right,
killing
right.
me.
So do you
Sorry to break the news.
find with these things, it's more so like it's not a all or nothing. Like, it's not to say that you should never have these things, but it's just the overall influence of too much of something out of balance.
Yes, I'm still, and I guess we need to look to the science a little bit more. This is more of me biasly talking about. I think moderation is always the way to go. Because there are some diehards that they'll cut things out of their diet when they hear that it does whatever. But how I'm thinking of it, and we need to do some research to see, this is still early on, is that because we see that aging rate is manipulatable, then yeah, the moderation thing should stand. Because if you balance it out, you just have way more good things going on, or if you identify something that really lowers the aging rate that can offset the bad things you do,
Right.
that might be a route too. And this is just hypothesizing here.
The more cheese in the future. All right, let's go.
We'll work towards that. The other side of that is that there are pharmaceuticals that really drastically change the aging rate, and there are companies that are working in that realm. That's something that we're kind of different on with Epipaws, is that yes, we are a longevity company for pets. That's one of our major goals, is to affect the aging rate, but we're approaching it from a food standpoint first, is what we'd like to do. And that's something that everyone can participate in. If everyone's feeding their pet better, we're just going to see longer lives in our pets, and our pets being happier and healthier during their life. And so that is our first goal before we hit into pharmaceuticals that not everyone's going to purchase and participate in.
I think that's a really good goal, because I will say, I do so much preventative medicine as a general practice doctor. And probably some of the longest appointments that I have, which I don't say that in a negative way, but people are very curious about food, about what to feed their dog, because we as humans, we show love with food. We know we
Yep.
feel better or worse depending on how we're eating. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have been focusing on, oh, I'm gonna do intermittent fasting for health, I'm going to stop eating gluten, whatever it is at this point that's making me feel better. How do I do that for my dog or cat? And it's like, I would actually like to have some real legitimate evidence before I give people my opinion.
Yes, and that's what we really want to develop because we don't have that. We don't have a way for our pets. And for humans, honestly, it starts with, like you said, knowing what makes you feel good. And
Right.
everyone eats differently, and it's based off of, well, I had a bad experience with that. I don't want to eat that anymore. I'm going to eat more of this. And for me, I've had that discovery as I've gotten older, is that I eat meat, but I don't eat it as much as I used to. And I don't eat certain red meats. They're just too fatty and it makes me feel bad. More vegetables, the better. It makes me happy. And everyone eats their own. My husband's the opposite. He can eat only meat and be the happiest person in the world. So we can't ask our pets that question.
Right.
We can't tell. And like maybe we can tell if they like a food or not like a food. But at the same time, we don't know how it really makes them feel and if something really made them feel good. And that's what we would like to try and figure out with epigenetics is there, how do the marks look when someone eats something that makes them feel good versus something that they eat and they don't feel good? And can we project that for the pet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the more we do it from like a validated kind of source, then we'll have a lot less of these situations where people kind of try things experimentally and then find out down the line, oh, we made a big mistake. Like this is
Yeah.
toxic for dogs, which unfortunately has happened with the best of intentions. I don't think that it was done on purpose to hurt any dogs, but
Yeah.
that's why veterinarians are so nervous to go outside of our comfort zone because we've seen it cause real damage, unfortunately.
Yeah. And food is the one thing we have the most control over for our pets, right? Like if there's anything we can control in our pets, it's their diet. So I
Yep.
think that's why it's such a big conversation topic with all the delivery foods, all the raw food diets, the grain-free diets. There's so many options out there, and owners are always asking which one's the best one for my pet. It's like the one control that we have for our
Right.
pets, and having that type of information would be I can't even describe how important that would be because it's just
Yeah.
that's what impact it would have on the industry. So I love what you're doing, and our owners probably want to know where do they get started? Like how do they get started with learning or helping or getting things moving with Epipaws?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for pet owners who don't know how their pet is, they can get a age test kit off of our website at epipaws.com. And then if you do know how old your pet is, or even if you don't and you're more interested in this biological age, we do invite pet owners to register their pets with us for research. And what we envision is that these participants, they will be the first ones to get a biological age score, and it'll be free to them because they submitted their DNA. They'll get the first score. And we can kind of ask them and get to interact with our customers or participants and figure out, how to best portray the score to someone. What did they expect? Did they get what they expected? Things like that. Because there's a lot we can tell from epigenetics, and there's a lot of education that needs to be done as well to the general consumer. And so we really want people who are interested in this and want to learn more themselves to participate and come along on this journey with us.
Okay, I love that because the thing
Yeah.
is that helps. That would also be one of those things where then you'll understand when people hear the word epigenetics and they're kind of like, wait, I don't really know what that means. Like then you can kind of say, well, this is what it is, and what did you expect is kind of like how do you deliver this information?
Yeah. Like when I
Yeah.
say I'm going to give you this biological age score, I realize that some people, no matter what I've told them, try to explain what it's going to be, what it'll tell them, they'll expect something different. They heard something different. They didn't quite pick up on what I meant or something like that. And it's a process to learn what they're expecting and thinking. I see it see it in my students too.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
you're teaching right now. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yes, I am. I'm teaching in genetics, but I'm hoping to actually teach a epigenetics course at the university. I'm at Nova right now, teaching. And it's just great to tell. And I have students who love hearing about Epipaws and want to get involved. So I'm starting a student research collaboration section actually
Awesome.
for Epipaws. So
But
That's
you know what?
awesome.
They're the ones that are really good at getting stuff out and getting stuff to be like, you know what I mean? Because it's just like second nature, all of the like social media and stuff like that. So that's probably really a good idea,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, definitely. And I am working with so I'm in an accelerator right now at a different, it's put on by a different university, and we're participating in a entrepreneurship class. And so we just got 6 interns from that I'm super excited about. And so they're going to be, so now I'll have students on the research side, and then I'll have students on the sales and business side. So it'll be interesting.
That's awesome. That's super exciting.
How do you like the accelerator program? What kind, how long is it? What's the story with it?
Oh my gosh, it's an amazing program. So it's FAU Tech Runway, and so Florida Atlantic University,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a year long. I get this. They've assigned me 4 mentors that I get for the whole entire year. They have different expertise. I have someone who's really all about brand and customer user experience and stuff like that. She's been so helpful. I have someone who's more on like the finance and has been a CFO before for a company. Somebody who's just kind of a generalist and knows a lot of different things. He's actually the one that teaches the entrepreneurship class at FAU and divvies out students to some of the companies in the accelerator. And then I have someone who has been a CEO before for a company and he's been really helpful. He's retired, so he has all this time. He's always asking me, like poking me for updates and stuff, which is great because I have someone to just bounce ideas off of and help with like negotiating contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience.
That's awesome. Honestly, I think it's because, and probably someone in the veterinary industry, veterinarians, we love what we do. We have this passion behind what we're doing, but sometimes getting there is not always the easiest thing because like we spend more of our time like we care about the information. We don't care about the money side of things. But unfortunately, to get a lot of these things going, you need the money. Unfortunately, it sounds terrible, but you need the money to get there. Like you need the funding, you need to support the brand. And it's like sometimes you just wish you'd be like, this is a good idea. Help me. And it's like
just like it's good. Just everybody just listen, just do it. We've experienced some of the same things on our end, just like we have this idea we want to get out there, and every person you tell is like, yeah, this is great, and it's like, right, so like how do we get it out there? And most of us, we're scientists in a different way, but like we're not trained to do this sort of stuff, so this is a whole different world that we're just learning about each day.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Lots of similarities there. And I can see that when I'm talking to vets. And at one point, actually, I wanted to be a vet, but like the vet schools, I had that challenge where like I needed to move to go to a vet school because there's only so many. And it just wasn't in the cards for me at the time. So I ended up picking something else, which I love being a scientist, honestly. So couldn't go wrong there. And I still got to work with animals, but in a different way.
Like very cool way. Like honestly, like dolphins and sharks, that's my dream job. Like I will switch careers
it's so cool.
I used to for my research that I was doing with sharks and dolphins, I had it set up where I could work with other groups that were already collecting samples, but I wanted to go in the field. So I would always volunteer for these projects to go into the field to help collect samples. And it wasn't always for my projects, just so I could get out there in the wild and like catch a shark, catch a dolphin.
I'm so incredibly jealous. Like that's
I
literally
am
my life
too.
goal.
That sounds awesome.
It was good times. It was good times. I miss it.
That's awesome.
So will you share, I think you may have said it quickly, but will you share your website? Just so we have a second go at it.
Yeah, definitely. So please go to epipaws.com to see what we're up to, see what we have going on, see how you can participate. And that is epipaws.com.
Can people also get your shirt? Because it's so cute.
Oh, I should.
You really should.
Coming soon.
Because I love it as you're wearing it. I'm like, I would wear an Epipaws shirt.
Oh yeah, no, I'll send you a shirt for sure.
Oh, yay, thanks.
When you're doing your podcast, you can,
Yeah, well,
I
probably.
sponsored
Well,
you to wear.
Epipaws week. No, that sounds great.
Exactly. I love it. And so if anyone has any questions for us, they can always email us at podcast@mybalto.com. And certainly if anybody ever wanted to get in touch with Andrea too, we would love to connect people. Because we love what you're doing. I'm really looking forward to what this brings pet health in the future. I love the nutrition focus. It's something that I just feel like I can't read enough about. I can't learn enough about. Every day I have a challenge that I'm like, I know nutrition could help this. And I sometimes wish I just could just solve that as an issue, but
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
doing it. So good.
That's what we're aiming for, is to help solve these questions around food. 'Cause I know that's my big pain point as a pet parent. Like, I'm still like, I don't know. Like, I need something to tell me how I'm doing on feeding my pet, and I try my best. um, and I had one last thing I was going to throw in there.
Yeah.
As collaborations go, it's not just pet parents and pet owners. I want to collaborate with veterinarians as well, and any samples they can collect. I do have a great someone who works with allergies, who is going to start sending me samples of some of their most plagued, customers with allergies that they can't figure out. And so we're going to see if there's, I don't know if we can, but we're going to see if we can help them there. But we also need, special samples from certain sick pets like CKD and diabetes. Those are all of interest, heart disease. So if there's vets out there that have, a passion for research and figuring out new things, I'd love to work with them.
I love that.
Yeah, honestly, we'll tell all our friends. And like I said, Sam and I have already mentioned your product to our clients in the past from our past podcast.
Yeah.
But in upcoming situations, we will also mention it just because it's such a great idea. And
So
even
great.
Sam mentioned beforehand, this is like the cutting edge of literally veterinary medicine. Like, this is where this field could change and revolutionize it. So thank you for what you're doing, because that's gonna be a huge help.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We really, really appreciate you being here. I can't tell you how much. We're so thankful that you came back a second time. And thank you so much. This has been the Pause It podcast, once again with Epipaws. Check her out. Check out Andria Beal's company. And thanks again for listening.